Should you be working for free, even if you're super experienced as a videographer, even if you have tons of expensive equipment, even if you've worked on some of the most highest end productions, should you still be working for free? My answer is yes. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys my whole experience with the free to fee concept and how working some jobs for free actually landed me some of my biggest opportunities, such as working on Jay Shetty's On Purpose podcast, which is one of the top self-help podcasts in the industry. I was able to travel internationally. I was able to land a skateboarding documentary project where I got to interview Tony Hawk. This is where I was able to work on some of the most exciting and profitable projects of my career. So stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to be uncovering a lot. So one of the most common things like within the industry that is a huge, big topic of debate is working for free. And a lot of people argue that you should never work for free. You should always charge something. You have to know your worth. And then other people say, like, when you are starting out, it's best to start off working for free. That way you can build up your portfolio and then progressively raise your prices over time. And I think both are very valid points. Like when I first started being a videographer, when I first started out as one, I was doing pretty much everything for free or cheap. And then once someone actually offered me money, that's when I actually like really obsessed with how much I was getting. I just wanted the actual experience, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if I wasn't working for free. Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum, a lot of people will say you should never work for free. You should always know your worth. People always have the money. Like, you just have to actually ask for it, which is totally true and totally valid. And my counter argument to that would be that sometimes working for free is going to be like a way of getting your foot into the door of somewhere. And then you could often, like, even if you're working on a free project, it doesn't mean that it's not going to lead to more paid opportunities. Sometimes these free like shoots that you're doing, free work that you're doing, can build up the trust with somebody who is capable of giving you higher paid work. It kind of just takes that free gig to actually build that relationship and build that trust. So you have to be kind of strategic in a way when you're doing the free to fee work. You don't just do it for anybody. Like, for the people that are experienced and should always be charging for the work that they're doing, like, you just have to be strategic with it. You can't just freely give it out to people. You can't just say yes to people that are like, oh, you mind collaborating on this thing? Or do you mind like doing me like this one favor? And then if you don't personally see any long-term value in working with that person, or you don't see anything really coming out of it, then yeah, that's an opportunity to say no. But if that's not the case and you see that there is opportunity that could potentially come from doing the free work, at least this one time, you should totally do it. And a couple stories that I have that kind of help at least kind of created that my opinion about it is, for example, a few years ago, I don't remember how long ago it was, maybe like 2018 or something like that, but this was when I was doing more like film set kind of work. And at the time, a buddy of mine, he was working on a short film. He was directing it, and it was a low budget thing. So of course there's not a lot of people that are going to be helping out. So he asked me like, oh, do you mind just coming and setting up some lights and like shooting behind the scenes of it? And I said, yeah, no problem. And then I remember I actually ended up getting a gig that day, like a paid one. And then I said, hey, can I actually come by after the shoot? And he's like, yeah, no problem. Like, we need whatever we can get. So I ended up really just being at like the last hour or two of the actual shoot. But I still showed up. I was just like, hey, that's another thing too. It's like, if you have a paid thing that shows up, like, at least kind of let the person know that you need to take it, but then you're still willing to like work on their project for whatever time that you're able to. At least in that circumstance, that's what I did. So I ended up showing up to that shoot, the last like 2 hours of it, did what I needed to do, shot some behind the scenes pictures, helped out with whatever I could. And then, of course, I always just kind of chit chat with everybody. You never really know who you're going to meet on any of these sets that's going to really like kind of bring your career forward. And then what ended up happening was I met the DP of that shoot. Um, I chit chat with him. I sent him the pictures and stuff like that. And then not too long after, maybe within a few days after the shoot, I actually get hit up by him. And then he was saying, "Hey, the director was saying that you'd be a good like PA or camera PA on a set. Do you mind helping me out?" I was like, "Yeah, no problem." And I don't even remember if he paid me or not. It was probably like something cheap, like $150. But what I ended up doing is I went to go help him out. Didn't even like necessarily ask for money. I was just he offered a little bit, I think, and then I went to go help him out. And then that's a little side note too. Like before I get deeper into the story, that's something else that a lot of people kind of say to avoid too is like don't show up on set as a PA if what you're trying to do is be a director because people are always going to know you as the PA or they're always going to know you as this lower level position. And anytime they think of you, like they're only going to bring you to be that PA position. And in some cases that is true, sure. But in my case, it wasn't. But it's just really just about how you present yourself and how you actually kind of communicate that sort of value to the person that's bringing you. So in their mind, they're like, all right, I'm going to get a camera PA. And then I show up as the camera PA and then we're chit chatting and then just kind of building the relationship up. And then he was asking, so what do you do? It's like, do you always just camera PA for people? And I was like, oh, I'm actually a DP. He's like, oh, okay. I didn't know that. Let me see your work. And I showed him my work and he was actually pretty impressed by it. So what ended up happening is I showed up as the camera PA or I showed up as like a regular PA on the first interaction with him. The second interaction with him, I was like the camera PA. And then on my next interaction with him, he actually hired me to go shoot like gigs that he didn't really want to be doing. So he would outsource the work to me. He would hire me and then have me go shoot it. And then I would deliver. And then from there, he was pretty happy with the work that I had given him. And I was able to be reliable, be transparent, and just overall, like, just deliver on everything that I said I would deliver to him. So after a few times of doing that, he developed a level of trust with me. And that was one of the producers that ended up employing me on a regular basis. And that all started from, I started off as like a PA. He met me as a PA, something that people normally say not to do because you're never going to get hired for something bigger because of that. That's far from the truth. It's really just about how you communicate and present yourself to the person that's bringing you on. If I just stood in my little corner and was like, oh yeah, I'm just a PA, I don't share anything else. Or maybe I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a PA, but I'm trying to be a DP. Like a lot of people will do that. I'm like, no, I just literally told them I'm a DP. And I just do these jobs because just to meet people. And because of that, and because of the trust that was actually built, like he would send me to go do his jobs. And then one of the things that he ended up doing was he was like, hey, I have a long-term like project working with this client. I trust you to do it. You're local to him. Would you be down to do it? And I was like, yeah, no problem. And it ended up being Jay Shetty. That was his client. So basically, he was the producer of the podcast, and I was one of the people that would go shoot and then edit it. And then from there, I would work on all the content, meet all the people that showed up at the interviews, the first like 20 episodes that we actually did. And then from there, like because of this little freebie thing that I did, and then that ended up being one of my highest paid gigs. And it was almost like a retainer client in a way. We always want that consistent work. And then had I been like that type of person who's like, I'm not going to show up to a shoot for free, like I know my worth, that wouldn't have happened. And it's not about not knowing your worth. It's just about being strategic on where you place yourself. Sometimes you just have to build that relationship with people in order to get to those next levels. And that's kind of what the whole free to fee concept kind of is. It's like you just have to, it shouldn't always be transactional to an extent. Like you should always be knowing who is worth putting that free energy into and knowing who's not. You're not always going to get it right, but that's really how I landed like a project like that. It's just working for free the first time. And that's not the first time that it happened. Second story. So long story short, I ended up getting fired from that podcast. I'm not going to go into that, but basically, around the time that I stopped, I was just like, all right, whatever. I'm going to find my next thing. And then I had met someone at that time who was working with an electric skateboard company. And that electric skateboard company was looking for a videographer to produce content for them. And then basically around the time that I got fired, I reached out to my friend. His name's George. I made a documentary about him, one of my older videos, not too old from the time that you actually watched this video. But basically, he was like, oh, do you want to set up a meeting with them? I'm like, yeah, I'm freed up from this previous gig that I was doing. I have time now. And then to give a little bit of context behind all of that too, I kind of want to I kind of want to share the story of how that meeting kind of got set up. So a few years prior to that, I was always filming skateboarding videos. I would go out, put my own money into making like as creative as I could, like skateboarding videos. I wanted them to stand out, and I wanted to practice like my cinematography ability and implement it into skateboarding content. So I would go out, create these videos, put my own money into it, and then there was a couple opportunities that I got to where I was able to do some more, I guess, like more professional kind of skateboarding related stuff. Like I ended up interning for a YouTuber for a little bit, helping him out with filming the content. And then he was connected to Braille. For those of you who don't know who Braille is, it's basically a big YouTube channel for skateboarding that's more targeted towards like kids. So they're very well known in terms of the skateboarding world. And then I got to go visit the warehouse, hang out there for a weekend, and it was super fun. Didn't get paid a single dime to do it. So from there, like some of the people that I met, I was from that relationship, I ended up meeting like someone from a nonprofit. And from that nonprofit, I got to interact with some of the skateboarders that were there. And then I filmed a little bit of content for them. And then within that nonprofit, I actually met my friend George. And I think we kind of knew of each other, but we didn't actually meet in person. We kind of just met randomly at a skate park. If you're a skateboarder, you know, like you end up sometimes just randomly meeting people that you have a lot of mutual friends with. So that was kind of the situation. And then we hit it off like pretty quickly. Like we were chit-chatting, we were hitting it off pretty well, and then followed each other on Instagram. Like didn't think much of it after that point. So, and then fast forward back to where I left off is he was like, oh, there's a company that I'm working with who is looking for somebody to create content. Like you should reach out to them if you're interested. I was like, yeah, for sure. And then keep in mind, at this point, never got paid a single penny from skateboarding. Probably been doing it for a few years at that point. And then, so I reached out to the company, I set up a meeting, and then something about the client told me like, okay, I feel like I should charge a lot more than I've in the past. And I charged like $2,000 for one of the videos. Not a lot of money, but for me at the time, I had never really produced stuff. I had always been like a freelancer. So charging that much money for me at the time was like that got my heart racing. But he ended up saying yes. And then that was the most excited. That was the first time I had ever really like raised my rates really high, at least what was really high in my mind at the time. And then I worked on the project with him, and then he liked me so much and he liked what I gave him so much that I ended up creating more videos with him. And that was just my main client for like the next few months. We were always making stuff. We were just, it was probably one of the like funnest like parts of my like career. Like I look back on that, I'm like, man, those are some good times. And I was working with my buddy George the entire time, and we just created like this bond with each other. And I got a really good friend out of it. Um, so that at that time, that was the most money I'd ever really made. And then from there, long story short, they ended up not really wanting to do the videos anymore. It wasn't really generating them enough of an ROI. But then he still really liked me, and he was like, "Oh, I want to refer you to another friend of mine who wants to create some commercials." And then this ended up being an electric scooter company. So he referred me to that client. I got the gig, and it was for a commercial. And then I ended up doubling my rates again, charging like around $4,000 at that time. And then they paid it, and then they used the video in a crowdfunding campaign, which actually raised them over $700,000. I looked at it earlier today, actually. It's like 775, so 750,000 just about. So when I kind of saw that sort of success on their page, I was like, maybe I'm charging too little. So they ended up going with another videographer or someone for a couple of their projects at that point, and then they came back to me, and I kind of knew, I'm like, hey, looks like you've been busy without me. And then I also saw the success that you got from the previous project, so raised up my rates again. That was the first time I ever charged over $10,000, and I was shitting myself because at that time it's like, or like if you never charged 10K before, 10K is like this magical number. So that was the first time I ever did that, and I got the project, and that was kind of snowballed into working on a lot more projects with him. And then he ended up being one of my best clients, still working with them today. And that was 4 years ago now, I would say. And the whole point of that story too is I started off doing work that I did for free, just out of because I wanted to be creative. And then some opportunities that came up, I did them for free. And then it just kind of led me down these different opportunities to where I can meet people that needed the commercial work. And I had like some of the credibility to actually charge what I charged. So again, that is something that if I've been like, oh, I'm only going to make skate videos if I'm going to get paid for it, like, good luck. Like, that didn't actually work out, or that wouldn't have actually worked out. And then the last story that I wanted to share is because I had spent a lot of time like with those skateboarders and networking with people within like the skateboarding world, it I ended up creating some more like passion projects out of some of the people that I met. So on my YouTube channel, some of the older work you'll see is Skatepreneur, the George Wang story. And then I also created a Skull Candy spec commercial. From that, I used that work and from the stuff that I learned from the course that I learned that I talked about in the previous video. I started kind of shopping the content around and trying to reach out to brands that I felt would want to make that kind of content. And then from there, I stumbled upon a nonprofit, another nonprofit. And then they ended up, I I ended up sending like cold emails to them, or to 89 people. I sent cold emails to 89 people. The 89th person was that that nonprofit. And then I did my thing. They responded, and I also researched, and like I saw that they were hosting an event. And then I offered like, hey, do you need photography done like for your event? I'd be happy to help you out, like free of charge. The reason why I did that is because it would just be a way of meeting the person, establishing trust, and kind of getting a taste of what kind of work they would actually get from me. And also, doing event photography is very low effort, doesn't cost me anything besides a few hours of my time. So offering that like kind of strategic free work, I'm not going to do a whole produced commercial for somebody for free. That would be absurd. But doing something that doesn't take a lot of my time, doesn't really cost me anything besides a few hours of my time, then sure, I'd be more than happy to do that. Um, he ended up saying like, "Oh, I already have a photographer," but or he said, "I already have a photographer," and I was like, "Oh, why don't I film it then?" And he said, "Oh, all right." And then from there, uh, had a little meeting. We chit chatted for like an hour, and then he talked about a project that they've been putting on hold because of COVID. And then from there, we were we started off like very well in the business relationship, and then I went to go shoot that event, whipped up an edit for him and gave it to him, and then he was like, "All right, I really liked this. I like let's discuss this project a little bit further." And then that ended up being, at least at the time, the highest paid project that I've ever like gotten. And it was a project filming skateboarding, a documentary about skateboarding and the nonprofit, and just getting paid to do it. And it was an amazing experience. And then you guys might see a little something about that on the channel down the road. I don't know exactly when, probably soon. And then yeah, from there, one of the biggest like surprises that I got out of that was I got to meet Tony Hawk. And that was probably by far one of the biggest milestones I've ever achieved in my entire career. Like 12-year-old me, like looking at me like filming Tony Hawk, he would have been like, "Oh my God, I like can't believe that happened. That's crazy." But yeah, so the whole moral of all three of these stories is really, I started off doing free work, building relationships, giving value to people, and following through on what I said I would do, and got to meet a lot of different people, and from there built up a better portfolio of things that qualified me for the higher end work that I got out of do, doing the free stuff. I don't know. I lost my train of thought. But anyway, so yeah, people that never work for free, honestly, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. Sometimes your best paid work, your highest like level like work that you do will probably start with doing something for free for somebody, and then the effect of the side, it will come with the side effect of who do you meet, what kind of stuff do you end up working on, and overall like it's just going to help you at the end of the day. Obviously don't just do it for everybody, that would be a waste of time to an extent, but be strategic about it. I always say work for do strategic free work. That's what's going to get, not just any random free work, otherwise people might take advantage of you. So that's the video today, guys. I hope you actually enjoyed those stories. I hope you got value from this. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one.